Hi, and welcome to the Midday Market Update here at FreightWaves for December 22nd, 2020. My name is Kevin Hill, here as always with Michael Vincent, and it's our interactive show, isn't it, Michael?
It is interactive, right? So FreightWaves, get LinkedIn and Facebook. Get your questions and comments in, and we'll be happy to address those and bring them up on air, see if we can't get them answered if there's any questions. We got a great show today, though, but there's some major concerns going on out there, right, in the cybersecurity world. And
there are. 2020 has really been the year of cybersecurity in freight. There's been just a rash of, cybersecurity threats, ransomware, malware, any kind of ware that you can think of, really, right? It's been fast and furious. So we'll talk about that in the news. We have a couple of companies, Forward Air and Central Freight Lines, that have been through recent attacks. So that's the news. We also have the weather with Nick Austin, and then we have a couple very great guests coming on starting at the bottom of the hour.
Yeah, we certainly do. We have Jim Mullen, who is he's former acting chief, right? Or
I think chief legal counsel at
well,
FMCSA.
he was chief legal counsel at FMCSA and acting director at FMCSA.
Yes. And
now he is chief administrative officer and legal officer at TuSimple, the AV company out of Southern California.
Yeah, so we're going to talk some
which
AV
will be really good.
with Jim, and then Alan Adler, our very own FreightWaves reporter, the chief of the Detroit Bureau, will be on to talk a little bit about AV and EV as well.
Yeah, kind of a year in review and what we're looking at going into 2021 with him, which will be a great.
I bet you SPACs will come up with Alan.
You think?
I think we'll talk about SPACs a little bit, especially if we're looking out in 2021. But in the meantime, we'll have Zach Strickland, our Director of Freight Market Intelligence, talking about the freight markets coming into the Christmas holiday, and then the latest economic news with Anthony Smith. But let's kick it over to Andrew Cox for the news and talk about Forward Air and the ransomware attack that they're under right now.
Yeah, we're going to get to Forward Airs on the second. The first one I got for you is from Central Freight Lines. The LTL carrier confirmed that it fell victim to a cyber attack which knocked out its operating systems and its call center offline last week. The new CFL Chief Operating Officer Steve Vondra says that the company was not the only one targeted. He said the cyber incident impacted CFL as well as many other companies across the U.S. He also said that CFL immediately contacted third-party professionals to assist in an investigation and informed law enforcement. Vondra said that CFL isn't aware of how the hackers infiltrated the company's systems, but that no ransomware group had demanded money from the LTL carrier. This comes just on the heels, as you said, of Forward Air's attack, Tennessee-based Forward Air's attack. They confirmed last week that they were hit by a ransomware attack, but we'll discuss that one next. The big story here is that this is developing. We're going to have more news on this throughout the day and throughout the week, so stay tuned for FreightWaves for more updates on Central Freight Lines.
Yeah, we'll have more updates on Central Freight Lines, and then we have another article that just came out. Our newsletter just went out about 3 minutes ago, or it's in the process of going out right now with the updated article on Forward Air, talking about the air angle of that ransomware attack.
Yeah, now you've got Central Freight Lines, right? I mean, are they related or not? Is there any indication?
I don't think there is. I think what we'll get into on the Forward Air is Hades, which is the group that is claiming responsibility for the Forward Air attack, is that they come out with ransom demands and also kind of you can trace them back. They're an active group. We don't really know.
They want you to know it's them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, gotcha.
And the Central Freight Line side, I don't think there was any demands for payment, and there was no group that was claiming a responsibility or that anyone can connect the dots to as of right now.
Right. So what do we have new on the Forward Air, Andrew?
Yeah, Mike, Forward Air was targeted by a ransomware attack last week, and the news story is that they disclosed to the SEC filing, or they disclosed in an SEC filing Monday that it will defer or may lose revenue as a result of the attack. Forward Air provided new details about the Tuesday attack, but noted that it impacted both operational and information technology systems. The company said that its terminals and facilities are fully operational, but it is still actively responding to the attack. The SEC filing provides the most detailed account from the company since the attack, but still leaves many questions unanswered. Nonetheless, the disruptions at Forward Air and the delays to customers suggest that the impacts were extensive. The attack underscores the vulnerability of the U.S. supply chain to cyber attacks that disrupt the movement of goods. Forward Air in particular has a large network of terminals that provide vital links to airlines' cargo operations. Something like 70% of all airline cargo operations run through Forward Air. And while Forward Air joins an increasingly long list of trucking and logistics providers targeted by ransomware attacks, few incidents have resulted in such extensive operational disruption.
Yeah, and Michael, Vincent, can you fill us in on kind of what the what freight forwarders and other people looking for air capacity, and you have a lot of experience in that. What are they? What are they doing right now to kind of circumnavigate this?
Yeah, it's panic, right? Yeah. It's panic right now, and trying to diversify their partnerships right now to try and move things, right? I mean, it's. On a very much more expedited time frame, it's much like you hear like the toy manufacturers getting Gene Soroka and the people at the Port of Los Angeles to go out and look for containers full of toys, right? Yeah. They're looking for those needles in the haystack to try and get these expedited shipments moving, and those looking to expedite those shipments are going to have a difficult time doing that right now, even if Forward Air is operational as they say they are. I mean, I don't have firsthand knowledge. I have to take them at their word. It can't be at the capacity that they normally would be with data flowing very easily, and then you don't have any transparency, which is a huge buzzword this year, but is true and has been a vital link for logistics and understanding the supply chain and movement and making sure those commitments are met forever since the beginning of trade. So without that, it's difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be difficult because we talk about the digitization of freight, the technology investments, the visibility, and all of that is basically shut down right now for the most part.
Yeah,
I mean, they can be fully
right.
operational, but everything that oil that lubes the system, which is technology, is down. So everything's back to manual processes.
Yeah, those moving inventories that are going on that capacity. Those are in your inventory, in your WMS, and you're counting on those inventories, and now you have lost visibility into that. It affects things up and downstream quite immensely. And like you said, air freight forwarders, et cetera, are not having a good time right now.
They're not, and you have to think about timeline too, because about this time last year, we went through this with truckstop.com, and it took weeks for them to get back up online,
Absolutely.
Operational. The Forward Air website is down right now. I mean, that's
you're not getting the error message anymore.
Shut.
You're getting a message from them, which is a step up, I suppose, but that's not.
I know, right?
It's not comforting.
I know. And on the air angle, John Kingston, Eric Kulish, and Nate Tabak have been following the story. They have the most recent update on that, talking to freight forwarders and other market participants about what they're doing to define capacity since Forward Air is down, finding their shipments, their visibility, going through that workflow.
Yeah, you can run a cross dock or a trucking terminal without that type of stuff. It's not easy. That's what I grew up in, so it was easy for me. I remember when our systems went down at my old life, and I was like, why are we sitting here? Well, we don't have any computers. Okay, there's a bill of lading. Let's get it going. This is a little different story.
It is, especially if you're a freight forwarder, right? And you need to know where your shipment is. Yeah. You're just not going to have visibility. It's certainly not going to be real-time visibility on that as well. Flash, let's move over to the COVID vaccines and deliveries of that. What do we have on that, Andrew Cox?
Yeah, Kevin, FedEx and UPS are delivering COVID-19 vaccines to many more locations this week as the logistics campaign behind the nationwide immunization program continues to scale up and settle into a predictable rhythm. And they may not stop for Christmas. That is the new news. The recently approved Moderna vaccine is going to an additional 3,400 locations on Monday and Tuesday, with an additional 1,000 administrative sites receiving the Pfizer vaccine, said Army General Gus Perna, who heads Operation Warp Speed. Trucks began picking up Moderna shipments at the distribution centers on Sunday, operated by healthcare specialist McKesson. Warehouse workers packed insulated containers holding the vials and special cold packs into the boxes and loaded them onto U.S. Express and UPS vehicles. Subcontractors such as Boyle Transportation and XBO Logistics for UPS are also helping with the transport of the vaccines to airports and other transfer points. The plan is to keep delivering through Thursday, through Christmas Day, but if states ask for shipments to meet a need, the industry is ready to go with delivery on Christmas Day to make sure everyone has access to the vaccine, Gus Perna said.
Good news.
It is good news. It definitely is. It's good to have that second vaccine, Moderna, out there, and certainly that is one of the most important things right now. If not the most important thing. It's hard to find anything that is more important than getting the vaccine out.
Yeah, tell me something more important, and I'll argue with you a little bit.
Right?
But yeah, so the Moderna, I think, is really good news because that's the one. I mean, it can reach logistically further into more remote areas more easily, right? That is the one that doesn't have to be cryogenically stored.
Yeah, it's just regular freezer type of temperatures that there's a lot of infrastructure out there existing to transport it and store it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Freight Tech. Freight Tech keeps rolling along. We have another $100 million capital raise, Andrew, don't we?
Yeah, in a year where VC investment slowed down in many other segments, that is not the case for Freight Tech. This time we've got Chicago-based supply chain visibility platform Project 44. They announced on Monday that it has closed a Series D financing round of $100 million as customers continue to flock to digital logistics platforms to help make their supply chains more efficient. The new funding will go toward continued global expansion of Project 44's multimodal carrier network, as well as new product innovations, partnerships, and integrations, both upstream and downstream within the supply chain, the company said in a press statement. Founded in 2014, Project 44 offers real-time transportation visibility with more than 400 enterprise customers, including 3 Fortune 100 companies, 2 of the 3 largest global retailers, and 8 of the 10 largest freight brokerages. For the third year in a row, Project 44 got number 2 in our Freight Tech Awards. They were just behind Amazon for each of the last 3 years. So congratulations to the team at Project 44 on the new round, and excited to watch what you guys do with your new investment.
Yeah, it just goes into the flurry of activity that we've seen, Flock Freight, a number of others that have been raising money. TuSimple back in November.
Yeah,
I believe was around $70 million. So we'll be talking to TuSimple here in a few minutes. It's just a flurry of activity, end of the year type of deals, and it's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's nice to see. It's nice to see the innovations in our industry, right? And and it's interesting to see where that money is starting to go. And here's visibility, transparency. We're just talking about the difficulties with forward air, right? And you've got this type of investment here. And I believe Project 44 is announcing going into Europe, expanding quite extensively in Europe as well.
Yes,
was on their press announcement.
Yeah, I think their last capital raise in 2018, which was roughly about half that amount, valued at just shy of $500 million. So that they didn't divulge their new valuation, but it'll be interesting to ponder that, right, Andrew Cox?
Definitely interesting to think about it. I'm not sure, we know that Project 44 has continued to grow. They continue to make new advancemess and innovation and keep rolling out new projects and new services. So yeah, Project 44, they've done a lot of deals. We've seen that as well, whether it be with Freightliner, with the Cascadia to implement the Project 44 visibility into those trucks. They're staying on top of things.
A lot going on. I mean,
like
literally, we are going to do an article next week on kind of the top cyber attacks, ransomware attacks of 2020, because it's gotten to be too numerous for us to actually list off, and that doesn't even include the tips and rumors that we hear about from other people who may have gotten hit, but there's no confirmation
you
of
see
that.
these. I mean, is this the new form of terrorism happening? I mean, if you want to bring a economy to its knees, cripple its logistics industry, right?
Yes, and it falls into the huge hacking story that's going on nationally through the government, defense contractors,
SolarWinds, yeah.
SolarWinds. So and it's just different groups coming out with terrorism and ransom, hostage taking of your data, and you pay a lot of money into Bitcoin, or you lose your records. Is the name of the game on that?
Yeah, Yeah, there it is.
is.
Yeah, I'm gonna send some ransomware to Nick Austin if I don't get a white Christmas.
I know we need a white Christmas. He's blocking the white Christmas from
Been
Chattanooga.
beating him up for a week. He just won't turn that snow machine on. Turn it on, Nick Austin.
So Nick, who's going to see a white Christmas this year?
Probably, unfortunately, not down here. I know I'm going to get a lot of grief for that from Michael Vincent and probably other people too. But I think the Northeast, at least parts of the Northeast, really have the best chance for a white Christmas. Some parts of the Northwest will see a white Christmas too, up in the mountains. The problem with the storm in the Northeast, though, that's going to be heading there for late Christmas Eve and Christmas Day is that for any drivers that actually will be working through the holiday and out on the roads, it's not that it's going to be a lot of heavy snow, but it's going to be a lot of wind. So let's take a look at it in Sonar Critical Events. This is the region here. It's not a large region, but these parts of the Northeast, the Eastern Great Lakes, is where we're going to see probably the heaviest snowfall from around Charleston, West Virginia, up to around Cleveland and Akron, Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, including Pittsburgh, and then up along I-90 into Erie, Rochester, Buffalo, and those areas there. So most areas will see about 4 to 8 inches, but we could see 10 inches or more in some of these areas here that are right just downwind of Lakes Erie and Ontario. You know, you get that lake effect snow machine going, and you know, in one day you could get easily a foot of snowfall. So, but there's going to be a lot of blowing and drifting snow out there, and so blizzard conditions possibly at times. So I'm going to just clean up the screen a little bit. We'll take the radar off. Here's the forecast for the winds as far as the maximum wind gusts coming up later in the week, and some of those areas here are expected to see winds possibly gusting at 35 to 45 miles per hour. A few areas might see 50-mile-an-hour gusts. So that's certainly going to cause problems, high risk of rollovers, as well as just really, really bad visibility up in that region. So that's really going to kind of be the area that's going to see, I think, the bulk of the Christmas Day snowfall for those who are wishing for a white Christmas. Let me remove that, put the radar back on there. And also parts of the Northwest here in the Cascades, up in the Northern Rockies, they're going to see some snowfall coming back on Christmas Day as well. And there's going to be a lot of high winds too across the plains Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Even in areas where it's not snowing, there could be wind gusts of 60, 70 miles an hour right through the nation's heartland. So that's going to be a big issue as well.
Never liked seeing those 50, 60-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah, they can
That's
be
like a
rough.
normal day where you're from. Isn't it?
That's
like a calm day.
It is a calm day in Oklahoma, definitely.
That's like light variable winds where you're from. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Nick. And we'll talk about some dangerous roads here at the end of the show with you.
Yeah, excellent. So the usual suspect's going to get a white Christmas.
Yes.
The snow belt.
The snow belt is going to get a white Christmas.
Did you see that nice big pink blob? That's where I grew up.
Yeah, I know, right? You're used to white Christmas.
7 inches is like, still school tomorrow.
I'm kind of used to ice Christmases whenever it does actually snow, because it's mostly just ice.
I got stuck
There's
got stuck in an ice storm in the panhandle of Texas, coming
Those
back
are horrible,
from Colorado skiing. I mean, we were there for 12 hours. It was just awful.
Those are really the worst.
Yeah, those can be bad.
Yeah, definitely. So now we have Zach Strickland, our Director of Freight Market Intelligence, joining us, talking about the Mad Dash to Christmas and kind of what the freight markets are looking like right now.
Yeah, so, you know, capacity is loosening rapidly right now, right before the holiday. Wait a minute. No, it's that typical time of year where capacity tightens. Now, we did see a little bit of a bump in the tender rejection index. It fell down over the weekend a little bit, but if you go back and look historically, this is standard procedure, kind of as a lot of shippers and carriers take a breath. Right before the holiday, we do see a rapid increase, a little bit of a break, and then it continues its rise throughout the holiday season. So tender rejection rates still not where they were around Thanksgiving. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that reefer rejection rates are underperforming the Thanksgiving levels thus far. Tender rejections right on par with where they were around Thanksgiving. We will probably break through the Thanksgiving boundary for van tender rejection rates right just above 28%. Right now we're sitting at about 27.7%. You know, and the big question is, will we hit that 30% mark this year? If we don't hit it over the next few weeks, I don't know if we'll ever hit that 30% tender rejection rate. But regardless of that, capacity is as tight as it ever has been. Surprisingly, though, this preference to the West Coast. We've seen a lot more coverage out of the Southern California markets here lately, which has kept that area a lot more under control, below the national average, right around a 22 to 23% tender rejection rate. And as I mentioned before, 27% throughout the United States.
Yeah, Zach, talking about that, I was looking at the map in Sonar on the outbound tender rejections and outbound tender volumes. Did a haul, or the outbound average length of haul, give you some indication, as we've seen that been rising, that give you a little bit of insight into that forecast that there would be more capacity on that West Coast? We've seen kind of that change in the expediting of shipments out of those ports, going a longer distance, right? Skipping that first leg, so to speak, in many instances of transferring at those warehouses in Southern California.
Yeah, we have seen Aloha, as you mentioned it, go up over the last few weeks. Traditionally, we see the average length of haul is what that stands for, the outbound average length of haul.
You mean everybody doesn't know that?
No, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, the average length of haul for the United States typically shrinks in December, because a lot of that freight that was moving from those DCs off those western warehouses and DCs comes east, hits a warehouse or a DC or fulfillment center on the East Coast, and then it has a much shorter distance to travel. Population density obviously in play, but we haven't seen it shrink over December this year. We still have a lot of volume coming off the West Coast. Carriers have identified this over the last 6-7 months. We've seen a lot of volume coming out of that West Coast port activity. Obviously, Long Beach and Los Angeles still cranking out containers right now. Rail volumes are up for both, the domestic and international volumes. And the question is, how much is still left in the tank? And if you look at our imports, what we're tracking, it's still as high as it ever was this year. So we're actually operating like a peak import season on the West Coast right now, looking at overall import volumes. So that means that we're probably looking at a lot of freight still sitting around, ready to move to start the year.
Yeah, that kind of feeds into what I was going to ask, because I guess myself, like most of us, are tired of talking about 2020. I don't want to talk about 2020 anymore. What does the first quarter of 2021 look like? I know on the West Coast, there's still a lot of stuff to be shipped. How about other parts of the country?
Yeah, well, I mean, everything's going to roll downhill. I mean, it's going to come, it's going to hit the West Coast port, and then it's going to have to go somewhere. Something we were talking about with Dr. Zach Rogers on Freightonomics last week about was the fact that there is not nearly the amount of warehousing capacity available that has been available in years past. Shrinking rapidly, the all-time low LMI warehouse capacity number contracting, and it was right around 38. And again, for those familiar with the PMI, anything below 50, contraction, anything above 50, expansion. So warehousing capacity is shrinking as rapidly as ever. So they're basically pulling in all this freight, cramming it into warehouses, putting it on the rails, putting it on trucks. And with a lot of carriers coming off the road here over the next couple of weeks, there's just not going to be a lot of options. You're going to see a lot of congestion around the port on the other side of that unloading ramp versus the water where they've been sitting here in the last few months.
With all the coverage, it's no secret that you got ships anchored out to Taiwan and out of Los Angeles, right? The port of Los Angeles. So I'm joking, but 20-25 ships or something like that are now an average of 4 days when it used to be like a day or something like that. I mean, there's a backup going on there. You think we're seeing some of that effect in maybe a pull forward of the Lunar New Year, like we did kind of with Amazon pulling forward the holiday season about 45, 75 days?
Well, I mean, anytime that you get this sense of capacity not being available, you see it in holiday shopping, you see it in marketing where people are saying, only 1 left, only 5 left.
Right.
Well, shippers have had that sense of urgency since May at this point in terms of getting capacity on a ship. And, we talked to Greg Miller several times, and they're saying a lot of those ships are booked through February already.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a combination of Lunar New Year, they know that that's coming, and they're going to have to put in orders months ahead of time to get on those boats, which obviously it's too late at this point. But there's just so much sense of urgency, and shippers are still trying to figure out where everything lands And this demand situation, where does it end up in terms of the consumer cycle, consumer behavior, vaccine distribution, and how that impacts the economy? They all want to be ready for it whenever it does clear up.
Those are all very interesting questions and wild cards for 2021, and we'll talk about those again next Tuesday on the next midday market update. But thanks for your insights, Zach, and fascinating as always.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting. Will January occur this year?
True. True. Will it occur? I always try to steer the conversation away from the West Coast because, that's all we ever talk about is the West Coast, but there's no way to really do that.
Well, I mean,
Because
it's a major
that's
port
the-
of entry.
I know,
but
right?
Yeah, I mean, as we talked to, even Gene Sirocco would tell you that, it's happening in all over, both coasts are getting backed up with cargo and with the imports. And obviously the maritime imports are a huge driver in the over-the-road freight markets. And so it's important to cover those.
They are, especially in 2020. They've been with all the spending focused on tangible goods. It definitely is. We had big news last night, too, from Washington, D.C. There is a stimulus bill that is through Congress, right, Anthony Smith?
That's right. So that ever-evasive stimulus bill has finally been passed and put through Congress. So relieving news for many Americans, but also a lot of Americans saying that this just isn't enough and it's a little too late as well. So the package is looking like it's going to be around $600 for each American. That's going to be within a certain salary household income threshold. I think that's with after $75,000 for the household, up to $99,000 is going to be truncated after each threshold. So up to $99,000 is going to get kind of shrunk as you get a little bit higher up on that income earning scale. So this is somewhat of a far cry from the original stimulus of the first round of stimulus first in the year, which was $1,200 per household. This one is still going to be, you're able to add another $600 for each child. So that's going to help a little bit of those families that have more children that are dependent on them. Also, I think the big part of it is that it's going to extend those individuals that are on the verge of being evicted come December 31st. So I think that's really the major part here, is that it's going to keep those Americans from being evicted and on the streets.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's half of what it was before, right? It was $1,200, now it's $600. Individuals $75,000 and below, and families of 150 and below, or something like that, right? 600 per individual and then 600 per child. But yeah, I agree with you. One of the major things that is in there is the evictions.
That's right.
That's
and
a
the other
huge-
major takeaway that we're looking at here is that it's going to be $300 in addition to those jobs claim benefits that are being put out. So as we've seen in the last couple of weeks, those jobs claims have been going up unseasonably and really unfortunately, because we're looking at those initial jobs claims, those individuals have been receiving benefits. Earlier on in the year, it was an increase of $600 on a weekly basis. Now it's going to be an increase of $300 on a weekly basis. So still not exactly where it was, but still something that's going to help out a lot of Americans that are in need, especially when we're looking at areas that are shutting down once more, especially for indoor dining, hospitality, and things like that throughout the country. So this is some movement, some progress. It might hold over some retail activity as we move throughout the remainder of December and into early January. But early thing to remember is that this doesn't mean that this will be the last round of stimulus. We have President-elect Biden is set to take office in January, and he also seems very persistent on putting around another round of stimulus a little bit earlier on in the first quarter of 2021, it seems like.
So, Anthony, let's talk about consumer confidence. Though there's a slight dip in that coming into the holidays, do you think the delay in the stimulus had anything to do with that dip, or do you have other reasons factored in there?
Definitely, I think the delay in the stimulus, but also I think the biggest point is the rise in cases and the restrictions kind of being put on a lot of Americans. So they're not really seeing a lot of progress being put forward when we're looking at what's happening with the amount of cases and shutdowns. And throw in the late or lack of stimulus as when this survey was put out, that's all going to kind of culminate into these reduced confidence levels. We saw in the tangible numbers for retail sales, of course, it wasn't too surprising that those are starting to decelerate. It's likely that these are going to continue to decelerate through the December number as well. Of course, keeping overall positive on a year-over-year basis for e-commerce and non-store retailer goods, but it's just going to be really hard for many Americans to make a lot of momentum or headway on these $300 checks on those initial jobs claims. But again, biggest things is those are going to be those Americans are going to be able to stay off the streets with that eviction protection. Those Americans that are applying for initial jobs claims being able to get that additional $300, and then those families that have a lot of children depending on them being able to get some additional assistance for them as well.
Yeah, it's all important stuff, but like you said, is it too little, too late? I don't know.
I mean, I don't know either. What do you think, Anthony? I mean, do you think it's...
I think definitely if there is going to be restrictions on the economy, there has to be some kind of aid from the federal government. But at the same time, Americans can't be dependent and expectant of any kind of payouts coming forward. So one of the things I really advise a lot of people that may have been impacted for this early on in the year is not to depend or plan around any kind of stimulus or help from the federal government, and take anything like that as just a bonus that might come around, and really kind of plan your way as if there's going to be no individual assistance from the government. I do think if we continue to see these shutdowns throughout the country, there's going to need to be some type of additional stimulus support, just because it's unfair to ask for Americans to stay at home, not work, and then still pay their bills, maybe at a lump sum once these lockdowns start to kind of taper off. So definitely in favor of either more stimulus or looser restrictions around the country.
Yeah, I would think that with Biden taking office in January, there's a at least hope for that. But like you said, you can't count on that to finance your family. Take it as a bonus if you possibly can.
Definitely. Thank you for those updates, Anthony. And we'll get your reading on the economy next week as well on the Midday Market Update. But now we have our first guest.
We do. Jim Mullen, the new Chief Admin Officer and Legal Officer at TuSimple, is joining us. Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
No, thanks for being here. We're doing awesome. So, are you in Southern California?
You know, I'm in sunny Omaha, Nebraska right now. I'm in Nebraska for the holidays. Yeah.
Awesome.
He might have a white Christmas.
He really in Omaha?
Yeah,
I guess he could.
Yeah. There's some snow, although it melted, but we're supposed to get some more snow tomorrow. So, yeah.
Excellent. So you're new, relatively new to TuSimple. Can you give people a little bit about your background, where you came from, and a little bit about TuSimple?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start with TuSimple. You know, it's a global technology company that is perfecting autonomous trucks. We've been around for about 5 years, have our headquarters in San Diego, but we also have operations in China. And we just partnered with an OEM over in Europe, Traton, and we're doing some AV testing in Sweden. And so we've got a lot of exciting things going on. So I just came from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. I was there for the last 2 years. The second of the 2 years, I was the acting administrator, so I ran the FMCSA for a little over a year. And prior to becoming the acting administrator, I was the chief counsel. A couple years before that, I was in D.C. on Capitol Hill, lobbying for large trucking companies and trade organizations. And then for about a decade, a dozen years before that, I was executive vice president and general counsel at Werner Enterprises, as you know, a truckload carrier here in Omaha. So I've been in the trucking business for about the last 15 or so years.
Great, Jim. Let's talk about autonomous vehicles, or AV. And they've come a long way. The technology's come a long way in the last, say, 5 to 10 years. Where's it going over the next year, 2 years, 5 years? What's the upside to it?
Yeah. So where is it and where is it going? It's much more advanced, I think, than people think. I was able to see into the AV space some when I was at the DOT. Saw a couple of the players in that space, their product. Then I was on the TuSimple truck, and it's incredible. We launched from DC to DC, basically. So my very first time on the truck, it had a flawless autonomous run for about 90 miles, going through town, getting on the interstate, dealing with merging traffic and motorists doing what they do out there. So It's real close, guys, and where we see it is in that middle mile. Long haul, middle mile, we think is where it's going to be its niche. We're partnered with an OEM here in the States, Navistar, and we look to have the assembly line produced Navistar with our technology on in 2024. And so in the meantime, we are working on what we call our autonomous freight network. Think of it as kind of like a rail track. And we're concentrating now in the South, I-10 corridor predominantly. We're running in Texas, we're running in Arizona, and we're running in New Mexico. And so we think come 2024, when that Navistar TuSimple AV truck is off the assembly line, it's basically just plug and play, and the autonomous freight network will have autonomously driven trucks on it.
Excellent stuff, Jim. So can you for our audience and really myself, clarification on, so you've got the testing going on, you're building the AFN, or the autonomous freight network, and I believe there's like several different layers to that, right? You're like in phase 1 or phase 2 right now, with I believe you've got some of that testing space in the Dallas area. I think we talked about last time when Cheng Lu was on the program. But so testing, is that level 4 testing, trucks running down by themselves, and where do you see that going?
So it's level 4 testing, but we do have a safety driver in the truck right now. We have 7 lanes, again, mostly in Texas and Arizona and into New Mexico. And we're hauling freight now in level 4 with a safety driver in the truck. And again, come 2024, we'll just swap out the manual units for the AV units. We're already partnering with a lot of the premier motor carriers in the country, some of which are public, UPS, US Express, and some of which that we're, silent partners right now. And we're working, of course, with those partners and with Navistar to what this truck looks like come 2024. And of course, designing that AFN with our potential customers in mind, already, mapping that out and trying to figure out where in their network our AV best fits.
Yeah, let's talk about, we have the technology, the updates in technology and the evolution of that. How about the regulatory landscape? You have great insights into that. How does the FMCSA and the regulations that are coming out or are out right now, how does it view AV and the adoption of that on the roads?
Yeah, so I heard the end of your previous segment talking about the change in the administration, so that may have some bearing on it. But right now, the climate is very favorable for the advancement of AV technology. The DOT came out with AV 3.0 and then AV 4.0, which addresses the autonomy. And of course, there's AV 3.0 that determined that the DOT would no longer consider that a human being be required to be the operator of a commercial motor vehicle. And that really opened up, obviously, the research and gave a boost of injection to the space. So I don't foresee that changing. I've read some of, assuming if Mayor Pete becomes the next DOT secretary, I've read some of his positions on AV. He seems very forward-leaning on AV. So I don't see that changing. FMCSA did release their ANPRM, 8-10 months ago, maybe even longer. And maybe they'll release the NPRM before the end of the year. Don't know for sure, but that's possible. And that'll provide some greater clarification for the AV developers. But I'll say that there doesn't seem to be any hindrance on the adoption of AV. And then on the state level, the states that we operate in, they already permit level 4 testing. And so we don't see any barriers right now for not only AFN, but really for AV in general.
So, Jim, my question is, what is the path from testing to full level 4 running?
Yeah.
How do you get there? Do you have to have a certain safety record? What kind of data? I mean, is it, what is it? Do you go to court and kind of prove it, like bringing hot fuel into a nuclear plant like back in the day? Or, what is it?
Yeah, it's not hot fuel on a nuclear plant. So the regulatory landscape right now in the federal side is there really are no barriers. There are no specific parameters or criteria that have to be met. And I guess kind of what you're saying is how safe is safe enough and how is that gauged?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So we've been working hand in glove with the federal regulators, as have others in our space, and we have a very good working relationship with the DOT. And there was that discussion during AV 3.0, AV 4.0, during potential rulemaking, not only just with FMCSA, with NHTSA, is do you have proscriptive measurements, criteria that have to be met? And as of right now, the federal government has said no. But they both, FMCSA and NHTSA, does have authority to shut down any motor carrier, whether it's a typical manual motor carrier or an AV motor carrier, if they don't feel they're safe enough. So we're working hand in glove with them. When we take the driver out, we'll have already had discussions with the DOT on the federal side. We work very closely with our state law enforcement and DOTs in Arizona and Texas and New Mexico. So what that looks like is between now and human out, everybody, all the stakeholders are aware of what we're doing, the feds, the state, the local. And then internally, of course, we do the analysis of how safe is safe enough. And candidly, our position is basically, it's got to be flawless, right? I mean, not only is it unsafe and irresponsible to have a product out there, an unmanned truck, if it isn't absolutely positively safe, but we all know, I mean, even if we were heartless, we all know that you got to protect your name brand, and we're not going to have a humanless truck out there unless we know it's going to be flawless.
Agreed on that. Yeah, definitely. You have to look into that. You mentioned niche a while ago, and I like to talk about niches. So you have long haul and the middle mile, and I'd like to get your thoughts on how you envision kind of the structure of that and the transfer, the final mile, first mile part of that probably being human drivers and autonomy in that middle mile and long haul mile. Can you describe that landscape?
Yeah, so it's whether it's a sorting site or a distribution center to distribution center. So there's always going to be that need for the first mile and the last mile, but that's how we envision the penetration of AV into the supply chain, is in that basically that DC to DC. There are some developers that think it's going to be a swap yard or a rest area or a truck stop. We don't see it that way. We think for it to be viable and sustainable, it has to be basically from DC or from dock to dock. And so that's how we see that work. And as I said earlier, we're already working with shippers and motor carriers on what that network looks like and where they can leverage it with their assets and our own assets.
Jim, you mentioned earlier that you had done some time but you were a lobbyist, right, in Capitol Hill, and so there's groups out there, obviously, that AV is going to take away driver jobs, and the drivers aren't going to have any jobs. But we have a shortage of drivers, and then there's discussion of, okay, does a driver actually completely removed from that vehicle, or do they become like in rail? Are they an engineer on that or a pilot, so to speak, on those trucks? How do you see that happening? Is this something that's going to hit in 2024, 2030, and just take over the industry, or is it slow, gradual? What's your thoughts on that? How do you fight that lobby?
Sure. When you said spend some time out there, you're going to talk about the federal government, but you talked about it as well. So,
yeah, you said I wasn't allowed to ask you that question.
Either way, it would be a fair analogy. So this is not gradual. You're absolutely right. It's going to be a gradual process. But to answer the other part of the question is it going to be a human doing other technical things in the truck? We don't believe so. We think that for AV trucks to be viable, it's got to be human out, whether it's because of the labor costs, without the ROI, whatever it may be. We think it's going to be human out. You mentioned the driver shortage. That's absolutely true as far as we are concerned. We think it's been proven. ATRI and other talk about the driver shortage, and it's going to get worse. You can't ignore the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse and what it has done to the driver market. I think the last number I saw was about 50,000 individuals who have tested positive or refused to take a drug and alcohol test. And so if they don't go through the return to duty status, they can't drive a CMV. And right, wrong, or indifferent, only about 10% of those are doing that process. So you're talking about 45,000 or so drivers who are no longer in the marketplace. in this pandemic, the closures of the state DMVs. And so, again, the last number I saw, there's about 130,000 less CLP and CDL hits. So that marketplace is constrained. And so we're not going to, there's always going to be a need for professional drivers. And we think we are going to help alleviate that driver shortage, complement the human driver on the first and final mile. And by the way, it's, as you say, it's going to be gradual, but also it's going to be a geographic for a while. So you're going to see predominantly AV working in the south, southeast, southwest before it gets up above, maybe the Mason-Dix line into the north. So, and we're very sensitive to this issue and work closely with our motor carrier partners. There's always going to be commercial motor vehicle drivers, and in our lives, the three of us, there's still going to be a tremendous need for commercial motor vehicle drivers, and we do not want to try to lead others to believe otherwise, because it's always going to be a need for a human driver.
It definitely will. And so it's been interesting to see, and it'll be much more interesting to see where we go from here. Thank you very much for your time today, Jim. I think we could have sat here and talked about it for another 15 minutes, but
yeah, absolutely.
We need to move on. Yep. How does our audience reach out and contact you or learn more about TuSimple?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just jim.mullen, M-U-L-L-E-N, at TuSimple.ai. And happy to talk, and happy to be back on the show anytime to talk more. I could talk about trucking and AV for hours on end. So thanks so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jim. Have a great holiday.
You too.
Yep.
Very interesting.
It is very interesting. It's the technology's just been on a tear for the last, I'd say, 5 years, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here, and what segments it kind of dominates.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? We have someone who knows a bit about this space and
he does,
electric vehicles as well.
He does. He's been following it very closely. It's Alan Adler, our Detroit bureau chief.
That's right.
Coming in right now. How are you two doing today, Alan?
Hey, good to see you guys. Thanks for having me.
Good. It looks like you are set up for a great Christmas behind you.
Well, give my wife the credit for that. I bring the boxes up and she does the decorating, but I think we're pretty ready. I mean, as much as we're going to be. Anyway, so listen, I like Jim Mullen. By the way, I've met him once or twice when he was at the FMCSA, and it's interesting that he's at TuSimple, because TuSimple is attracting a lot of attention from a lot of places. They're getting a new investment. They just raised $350 million, which I'm not sure if that's their D round or what round it is actually. I think they're probably a good candidate for a SPAC, which is another topic we talk a lot about, for the special purpose acquisition company. I noticed that Vecto IQ is among the investors now, and that was, of course, the company that brought Nikola public, the fuel cell electric vehicle truck company. So, they're attracting a lot of attention, and they've picked up some rail attention, interestingly enough. Can't remember if it was Canadian National or who it was, but one of the rail companies is invested in them now. And it's very interesting on the Navistar side, because we talked a lot to Navistar when they announced this, because, bringing a level 4 truck out in 2024 is a big deal. Now, it's only going to be one model, and it's going to be, not a lot of options and things like that. But they do have every intention of it being, driver out, as Jim described. And they've been doing a lot of work together. And now, of course, with Traton acquiring Navistar, which actually that federal proxy was filed today, as a matter of fact. And Traton has invested a small amount, 1%, not 1%. I can't remember the number, but Traton has invested in TuSimple, as has Navistar. So they've got their fans. They're not alone, of course. And I think, on the other, as I think about the rest of the manufacturing environment, Daimler's done quite a bit. They just showed us their second generation autonomous truck a few weeks ago when we were out in Oregon. They don't talk a lot about it, and they're very much about it being the rest of the decade. They're not trying to, beat Navistar to be first or anything like that. They continue to talk about a safety message around it. But they're working with Waymo, which has been very big, of course, in the car side of autonomous vehicles. And they've got a robotics company they purchased a little over a year ago. So they're very big. They've got a lot going on out at Daimler as well.
Excellent stuff. So, Alan, you mentioned SPAC, and I know you hate to talk about SPACs, but I want to get your I want to get your reaction. I'm gonna say one word. I'd like to get your reaction. I think you'll know what I'm asking, and that word is Nikola.
Well, Nikola is, they're hanging in there, guys. I mean, they got through some real heavy events. The lockup came off on the original shareholders and on Trevor Milton, the former the founder and the former executive chairman. All the structures have come off, and yet they're still hanging in there. I think the thing that people forget maybe about Nikola is that they are a pre-revenue company. There was never, ever that I know of the thought that they would make money this year, that they would be producing anything this year. I think what happened is all that hype that Trevor Milton put out there about the now probably never going to be built Badger electric pickup truck, it became a distraction for them. And I think it got the focus off of what they're trying to do, which is very, very involved, very complex, which is to create a fuel cell heavy duty truck. And of course they're going with battery first. They actually have some on the ground now in Arizona that they brought over from Germany, and so they're making progress, but it's slow. It's not going to be tomorrow. So there's a lot of people that lost a lot of money, in the run up in Nikola, and they're angry and they're disappointed, and Nikola's taken quite a hit. Quite honestly, deservedly so on certain things. But I think what they're trying to do now is run their play. They put out these goals, if you will, a timeline where they say we're going to do this by this time and this by this time. And so I guess if you're going to play that stock, you're going to play it long. You're not going to be in it for a few days.
So does that cool off the SPAC market?
No, goodness, no.
No. Yeah, I mean, it hasn't.
Yesterday and today, not even close, guys.
Not even close.
You've got, not even close. 240, I believe, is a good working number of SPACs that have started this year. That number goes up every time I look on a site called SPAC Insider. Just in the last 24 hours, you've got 2 more SPACs that would arguably be in the space that could affect freight. One of those company that I'm a little bit familiar with, the LiDAR companies that do the lasers and the actually, interestingly enough, TuSimple doesn't use LiDAR, but the others do. This laser finder, if you will, that locates objects and bounces lasers off of the vehicle. All of those. Another one just came into a SPAC this morning called Ouster. I'm a little bit familiar with them. They joined Velodyne and Luminar, which has been good. And those stocks today, by the way, are taken off. And part of that is because of Apple's announcement that they're kind of serious again. They go back and forth on having an autonomous vehicle. But I will tell you that the electrification side, another one just came in yesterday that our colleague Mark Solomon told me about, is doing a Class 1 vehicle. Now, typically we don't care a lot about Class 1 because that's sort of passenger car size, but it's a delivery vehicle, and it's one that's actually already running in China. The folks that are starting it up over here, it's called ELMS, which is Electric Mobility Systems, I believe is what they stand for. Just got almost $2 billion in SPAC money. This is not stopping. And next year, you've got all these guys out there that have started these SPACs. They need to find somebody to invest in. They only get 2 years to do it. So there's a big hunt going on.
Yeah, I'm going to be. I'm very interested to see what the SPAC market does in 2021. I think it's going to be a great story to follow, and I imagine there's going to be some freight and freight tech companies that join in on that SPAC wave. Mm-hmm. We're out of time for the segment, Alan, but if people want to reach out and learn more about your articles, story ideas, that type of thing, how do they reach you?
A couple ways. One obviously is Adler at FreightWaves.com. And that's my address at the company. But also Alan Adler, Adler, or at Alan Adler on Twitter. If you've got some ideas or you've heard something, some of the SPAC guys are following me now, which is kind of fun because I write about SPACs and I tag them back. So we'll see what happens. But it is not cooling off, guys.
Good. Well,
excellent. Thanks, Alan.
Alan, have a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you on the Midday Market Update very soon.
Okay, thanks, guys, and Merry Christmas to you.
Great. Well, let's turn to the weather once more and see what we have from Nick Austin.
Maybe he's got an update on my white Christmas.
I know. I'm hoping so.
I sure do, guys. I really wish I could get some snow down here in the Chattanooga area, other parts of the South for Christmas, but I think we're going to be disappointed. I know people don't want to hear that. I know Michael Vincent doesn't want to hear that. But
so
the
your
best
update
chance
is no change?
Well, no, the forecast can always change a little bit, you know. It can always change a little bit. But I think the best chances for snow on Christmas Day, just a quick recap, parts of the eastern Great Lakes, the interior Northeast, especially some of that lake effect snow, it could last into the day after Christmas. And then the mountains of the Northwest will probably see some snow on Christmas Day. So that's where the best chances are going to be. A couple of quick shout outs. Rhonda watching us from Phoenix. She's a regular viewer of the Midday Market Update. She says it's sunny out there and it's going to be up to 70 this afternoon. So that sounds like a really nice day. I hope she enjoys that. And Christopher up in Boston says the sun's coming out and the snow on the ground there is melting. So that's good news. And you mentioned earlier, yes, some really bad, we have a lot of bad roads out there for truckers, whether it's just the design of the roads, they're just in bad shape, or because they go through mountainous areas, so it makes it really dangerous during bad weather. And there's an article up on the website right now. It's America's Most Dangerous Roads for Truckers. This is part 4 of the series. And it's really based mostly this time on traffic fatality data. So one of the worst roads in the country for all drivers, and particularly truckers, regardless of the weather, US 1 in Florida is actually the deadliest road of all highways in any other state. That's definitely at the top of the list. And 2 of the others in the list are also US routes, and one of them is an interstate in Texas. So head to the website, freightwaves.com. It's all in that article there.
Certainly the interstate in Texas is in Houston, which has horrible traffic. So I'm not really too surprised about that. US 1 in Florida, where does that go? I'm not familiar.
You're not familiar with US 1?
Is that the one that goes down to Key West?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
Mile marker 0.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you've driven that road. Right?
Many times.
Yeah.
That is one of the worst roads.
Yeah, it made the top of this list, which is part 4, right, Nick?
Correct. Yeah. As far as the way they did it, especially the one in Florida, for US 1 in Florida, over the last 10 years, there have been more fatal crashes, whether it's cars, trucks, overall, just more fatal crashes on that stretch of highway, US 1 in Florida, than any other highway in any other state over that same time period. So that's why it's at the top of the list in this particular article. But some of the other ones in the article are certainly bad too. I mean, they're up there. It's probably the top 4 worst in the country. And that's pretty much strictly based on the traffic data, on the fatal crash data, is what this is going by from various agencies out there. So certainly they are roads that drivers want to use very, very cautiously and carefully if they have to use them at all.
Yeah, A1A Beachfront Boulevard, right?
Yeah. I think Louisiana
US
Highway 1 is another danger. I think it's Highway 1. That one goes down to Grand Isle.
Yeah.
Grand Isle. I've driven that many times, and
Yeah.
it's just bayous on both sides.
Oh yeah.
Large part of it.
Yeah.
No guardrails, anything, just bayou.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, definitely. So, what do we have in store for 2021? What's our next virtual conference?
Well, February 22nd through the 23rd is the Global Supply Chain Week virtual event, right? And that's a full week going through the global supply chain. Monday covering air cargo and ocean logistics. Tuesday, geopolitical challenges in aerospace, military. Wednesday, food, produce, perishables, consumer packaged good and retail. Thursday, manufacturing and building construction. And Friday, health, pharma, mining, chemicals, energy. So a full week going through global supply chain. It's going to be great, jam-packed with information. So check it out on FreightWaves.com. You can go there in events and register right now, but it's going to be a great week.
Yeah. And if you want to talk about electric cars, EV type of situations, Great Quarter Guys at 2 p.m. They're going to talk about the Apple car, and you can find all our shows on FreightWaves TV, tv.freightwaves.com, and podcast versions on FreightCats. So that wraps it up for this midday market update.
Peace and love, everybody.